how much XLM do you actually need to retire? Not how much would be nice. Not how much. If XLM goes to $100, the actual, specific, honest number that buys you the freedom to stop working based on your real monthly expenses at the prices this coin can realistically reach, given everything that's happening with this network right now. Before we continue, if you enjoy this type of content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Now, let's get back to the topic. Let me frame this differently than you've probably seen it framed before, because I think the usual way of answering this question skips something really important about XLM specifically. Here's the thing. XLM pays you nothing just for holding it. Nothing. Stellar's old inflation mechanism, the one that used to distribute new XLM to holders as a kind of passive reward that got deprecated back in 2019. So if you're sitting on XLM right now, your tokens aren't compounding. They're not generating yield. They're not doing anything while you wait. Every single dollar of retirement income you ever pull from an XLM position has to come from one place and one place only, selling the actual tokens themselves. This sounds obvious when you say it out loud, but I think a lot of people don't actually run the math on what it means. It means your XLM position isn't a money machine. It's a runway. A fixed, finite amount of value that at some future price can be converted into a specific number of months of your life where you don't have to work. And the question isn't how much XLM makes you rich forever. The question is, how many months or years of real freedom does my stack actually buy me at different prices based on what I actually spend every month? That's the frame we're running today. Not abstract millions, not some formula that sounds smart but disconnects from your real life. Just the honest runway math at real prices for real monthly budgets with the freshest data available, because things have genuinely moved for this network this week, and the numbers need to reflect that. Let's set the baseline 3 retirement lifestyle scenarios, because retirement means very different things depending on where you live and how you want to live. Scenario 1 is what the FIRE community calls geo arbitrage. You move somewhere cheaper, Southeast Asia, Portugal, Mexico City, and you live well on roughly $2,000 a month. $2,000 covers rent, food, healthcare, travel, a decent life, not deprivation, an actually comfortable existence in a place where $2,000 buys what $6,000 would cost you in an expensive American city. Scenario 2 is modest domestic retirement. You stay roughly where you are, you cut your expenses, you're frugal but not miserable. $3, $500 a month, covers housing, food, a car, healthcare, some enjoyment. Not luxurious, but not anxious either. Scenario 3 is comfortable retirement. You don't really have to think about money $7,000 a month. You're not flying private, but you're flying business when you want to, living in a nice place, eating well, traveling a couple of times a year. 3 scenarios, $2,000, $3,500, and $7,000 per month. Now, let's run the runway. Here's how the runway calculation works. You hold a stack of XLM. At some point in the future, the price is at some level. You start selling a portion every month to cover your living expenses. Your stack shrinks over time as you sell. Eventually, either the price keeps rising and you barely feel the drawdown, or the price is flat and you're burning through principal. And at some point, the runway ends. The question is how long that runway actually is based on how much you hold and what the price is when you start drawing. From it, let's run this for 3 realistic XLM price scenarios, because nobody can tell you with certainty where XLM goes, and pretending otherwise would be unethical. I'm going to use $1, $2, 50 cents, and $5, not because those numbers are guaranteed, not because I have a crystal ball, but because they're grounded in what this network has actually done historically, what comparable networks have reached in market cap terms, and what the institutional momentum makes at least plausible. XLM's all-time high after the 2019 burn, when 55 billion tokens were burned and the supply was meaningfully reduced. Putting XLM's peak on a post-burn basis was around 79 cents back in 2021. It has not revisited its pre-burn high. From 2018, $1 represents a new all-time high on a post-burn basis. A meaningful milestone, but not an insane number for an asset with the institutional case Stellar currently has. $2.50 would represent a market cap of roughly $85 billion at current circulation, comparable to what XRP achieved at its height. $5 would put XLM's market cap north of $169 billion. Ambitious, but worth understanding what it means for your specific position if it happened. Now, here's something genuinely important to add to this picture before we get into the numbers, because it just happened yesterday, July 1st, and it changes the context around these scenarios in a real way. Stellar announced it's joining the OpenUSD consortium as a launch partner. That consortium is building a new stablecoin, and it's backed by Visa and BlackRock. And this follows Stellar joining as a partner for Circle's cross-chain transfer protocol expansion, which brings native USDC transfers to the Stellar network, and it follows the US test stablecoin launching on Stellar on the same day. The network had 3 significant announcements. On July 1st alone, XLM responded with a 10% rally. And there's a Protocol 27 upgrade vote scheduled for July 8th, 6 days from now, adding another near-term catalyst. I'm not saying this to pump excitement. I'm saying this because the runway calculation you're about to run needs to be grounded in whether the thesis underneath these price scenarios is getting stronger or weaker. And right now, this week, the evidence is that the institutional stablecoin case for Stellar is genuinely accelerating. Okay, the numbers, let's go. If you hold 100,000 XLM, currently worth roughly $19,500 to $20,000 at today's price of roughly 19 to 20 cents. How long does that position last in each price scenario? If you sell what you need monthly at $1, your 100,000 XLM is worth $100,000. If you're doing the geo arbitrage retirement at $2,000 a month, that's 50 months of runway, 4 years and 2 months. Not forever, but genuinely meaningful supplemental freedom. It could cover a career break, a year of travel, plus a buffer, a serious bridge to something else. At $3,500, modest domestic, that's 28 months, 2.5 years. At $7,000, comfortable, that's 14 months, just over a year. At 250%, your 100,000 XLM is worth $250,000. Geo arbitrage runway is 125 months, over 10 years of freedom. Genuine decade-long retirement territory in a low-cost location. Modest domestic at $3,500 gives you 71 months, just under 6 years. Comfortable at $7,000 gives you 35 months, almost 3 years. At $5, your 100,000 XLM is worth $500,000. Geo arbitrage for 250 months, over 20 years. Modest domestic for 142 months, almost 12 years. Comfortable retirement for 71 months, nearly 6 years. So there's the picture for 100,000 XLM, supplemental at $1, meaningful but not permanent at $2.50. Genuinely life-altering at $5 for most people's scenarios. Let's move up the stack. If you hold 500,000 XLM, currently worth around $95,000 to $100,000 at today's price, this is still a realistic accumulation target for a disciplined investor who's been in this market for a couple of years. At $1, your 500,000 XLM is worth $500,000. Geo arbitrage at $2,000 a month gives you 250 months, 20 years, and 10 months. That is full retirement by almost any definition. You're living in Bali or Lisbon for 20 years on this position. Modest domestic at $3,500 gives you 142 months, nearly 12 years of full coverage. Comfortable at $7,000 gives you 71 months, almost 6 years. At $2.50, this stack is worth $1,250,000. Geo Arbitrage Runway is 625 months, 52 years. You cannot spend this position down in a normal human lifetime at $2,000 a months. Modest domestic for 357 months, nearly 30 years. Comfortable for 178 months, almost 15 years at $5,000. XLM is worth $2.5 million. This is generational wealth at almost any spending level. Now the question is, can 500,000 XLM actually be accumulated by a regular person in a reasonable time frame at today's price of 20 cents? 500,000 XLM costs roughly $100,000 for someone earning a median salary and saving. Aggressively, that's several years of dedicated accumulation. Not impossible, but not trivial either, for someone who got in earlier or who's been consistently adding over time. This is a realistic target. But here's the scenario where the runway math gets genuinely interesting, and I think it's the most honest, exact number this video can give you for most people watching. If you have 100,000 XLM today, which costs roughly $20,000 at current prices, that is a position almost anyone in a developed economy with some disposable income could build over 1, 2, 3 years. And that position, if XLM reaches $2.50, buys you 125 months of geo arbitrage freedom, or 71 months of modest domestic freedom. And that is the number most worth actually sitting with. The exact number is not a one universal figure. That's the honest answer. It depends on what you spend and what price XLM reaches. But here's the matrix that makes this specific. For a modest domestic retirement of $3,500 a month for 30 years of runway, you need roughly $1.25 million worth of XLM. At the time you start drawing from it, at $1, that's 1.25 million XLM. At $250, that's 500,000 XLM. At $5, that's 250,000 XLM. Pick your price scenario, pick your coin count, and you got your number. Now, let me be honest about 3 things that sit underneath all of these numbers, because leaving them out would be the same kind of intellectual dishonesty that makes a lot of this content useless. First, the XLM supply risk. The Stellar Development Foundation holds roughly 41% of total supply. About 21 billion tokens remain out of circulation with no fixed distribution schedule. That's not an imminent collapse. The Foundation's historical release pattern has been tied to grants and partnerships, not profit-taking. But it is a structural overhang sitting above every price scenario I just gave you. If the Foundation's allocation decisions ever shift in a way that floods supply into the market, the price targets I use could take longer to arrive or might not arrive on the timeline any of us assume. This is a real risk that belongs in the honest version of this calculation. Second, the zero yield problem over time. Because XLM doesn't pay you anything for holding it, the runway calculation I just ran is what mathematicians call a fixed capital depletion problem. You're not earning any income from your position. You're simply burning through it month by month. That means inflation erodes your purchasing power in a way it wouldn't if your position were generating a yield that at least partially kept up with rising costs. $2,000 a month in geo arbitrage living today is not the same $2,000 in real purchasing power or 10 years from now. The runway in real terms is shorter than the nominal months suggest. I didn't inflation adjust these numbers, and that's a limitation worth naming honestly. Third, the concentrated risk you're taking on making XLM a retirement asset. Every scenario I ran assumes your XLM position is your retirement fund. That is a genuinely extreme concentration in a single volatile asset. Not because XLM is a bad asset, but because any single asset, even a bond, even an index fund, shouldn't be the entirety of your retirement plan if you can avoid it. The scenarios above work best when XLM is a meaningful but not sole position in a broader financial picture. And the people who actually execute them well are the ones who have some non-crypto income savings or asset base sitting alongside it. But here's what I think is actually the most useful framing to leave you with beyond any specific coin count. Stellar had 3 significant announcements in a single day this week. The OpenUSD consortium with Visa and BlackRock is real. CCTP native USDC on Stellar is real. Protocol 27 is a week from now and it includes functionality specifically designed to deepen enterprise usability. The DTCC tokenized securities integration is still targeting the first half of next year. The institutional momentum behind this network is, at this specific moment, better than it has ever been. The price right now at roughly 20 cents is nowhere close to reflecting those partnerships the way it probably would if this were a technology stock instead of a cryptocurrency. The honest, exact number this video promised you is this. For a 30-year retirement on modest domestic expenses of $3,500 a month, you need 500,000 XLM to reach $2.50. That is the target most worth working toward if you believe in the institutional thesis sitting under this network right now. $500,000 XLM at today's price costs roughly $100,000. At $2.50, it's worth $1.25 million and generates nearly 30 years of runway at that spending level. That's the number. Not magic, not guaranteed, but grounded in math. You can actually verify yourself at a price scenario that doesn't require XLM to outperform every asset in crypto history, just to reach roughly the market cap that XRP hit during its best cycle with partnerships that arguably dwarf what XRP had at that time. It's this kind of runway math actually running how many months your position buys at different prices instead of hiding behind abstract formulas is the kind of analysis you want to see more of. Hit like on this one. It genuinely helps put this in front of more people who need honest numbers instead of exciting headlines. Subscribe if you want the XLM story tracked this closely going forward, because Protocol 27 next week and the OpenUSD consortium launch are both going to generate their own coverage, and I'm going to be looking at whether the price starts reflecting the partnership momentum or keeps grinding sideways. Drop a comment and tell me which scenario you're actually building toward. The geo arbitrage 100,000 coins, the serious domestic 500,000, or something else entirely. And tell me whether the honest zero yield reality of XLM changes how you think about what you're holding. Because I think most people haven't sat with that specific fact long enough. And if you know somebody who keeps saying they'll retire on XLM without ever having run a single month of actual runway math on what they hold, send them this video first. Have a great day. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and be sure to join my free Telegram community with the link on my channel where I post my daily crypto experience and arbitrage opportunities you can't get anywhere else. This is XRP Hobart signing off.